process is through benchmarking. In that same recommendation, the Court went on to say the Court would urge the unions which are party to this dispute to reconsider their position with regard to participation in benchmarking so as to have their claims examined through that process. Well, we did go to benchmarking, and their response in relation to our claim for parity with therapeutic grades for staff nurses and CNM2 level is as follows. The claim by nurses for parity with therapeutic grades is generally beyond the terms of reference of the body, which are confined to the grades determined by the parties to the benchmarking process, that is, the grades on List A. In relation to the anomaly with the social care worker, the body states at 1250 it is not consistent with the benchmarking process. Failing the issue of the benchmarking findings, the PNA INO wrote to the Labour Court stating the reality that the benchmarking body, contrary to views expressed by the Court on 3 occasions and subsequently by the National Implementation Body established under Towards 216, have determined that the INO PNA claims for equitable pay in respect of nurses and midwives employed in the health services were beyond their terms of reference. And we set out what we are seeking, a renewed investigation by the Court that the matters in question are unfinished business which arises in circumstances where both the employer and trade unions followed the course advocated by the Court on 3 occasions and the NIB body and are still left with a major unresolved dispute. We wrote to the employers on the same day advising them that, as our claims were not dealt with at benchmarking, that we were requesting the Labour Court to reconvene in order to deal with our long outstanding claims. We set out to the employer our belief that the public service benchmarking body, uniquely in the case of nurses and midwives, has created an opportunity for health service employers and the INO PNA to meaningfully engage under the auspices of the Labour Court in an attempt to find an equitable rate for the nurse and midwife in the context of their changing professional role within the health service. Indeed, to be fair to the HSE and to Professor Drum, we appeared to be pushing an open door in this respect. In the autumn issue of Health Matters, which is the national staff newsletter of the HSE, a banner headline on page 4 proclaims, "A time of unlimited opportunity for nursing and midwifery." This article goes on to state, "A number of developments are planned in the health service in relation to nursing and midwifery arising from the resolution of the recent dispute. This is now an exciting and challenging time for nursing and midwifery as we move forward together to try to build a health system that we can all be proud of. The agreement which has been reached between all parties presents huge opportunities for the profession." That's what Professor Brendan Dunn said. Also commenting on developments, Siobhan O'Halloran, who was the Nursing Services Director of the HSE, said, "The next year will bring with it a time of unlimited opportunity for nursing and midwifery to develop in ways we probably could not have imagined 10 years ago. The prospect of engaging with the idea of an expanded and enhanced role for nursing and midwifery within a transforming health service is really exciting. What we need now is real dialogue amongst the profession so that we can respond to this challenge and continue to drive innovation and change within our health service." In our correspondence to management, we also set out that in any such engagement we will positively approach the transformation agenda of the HSE and deal with significant role expansion inherent within and arising from changing modes of service delivery, and that we believe it is time now for a serious engagement on these core remaining claims. There is an urgent and compelling need to properly value the role of the nurse and midwife in the context of an equitable pay structure within the health service. The revised minimal educational requirements of the professions, combined with increasing momentum towards role enhancement, deem it imperative that all parties now accept the need to value the new role which is emerging and end the cycle of continuous rotation of the legitimate aspirations of nurses and midwives from one third party to another. It may be a view in government circles that this nursing dispute is behind us. Far from it. Nurses are now angrier than ever. We seem to be a unique group where neither the Labour Court nor benchmarking will deal with our legitimate claims, and legitimate they are. And I will quote on Taoiseach again, when in a letter to the PNA INO he stated that he believed that engagement with the management side under the aegis of the NIB had the capacity to identify ways in which issues of great concern to nurses can be addressed. Well, they haven't been addressed, and we will not tolerate being sent from pillar to post. Des Kavanagh spelled it out at a joint press conference with the INO on 16th of January. We will take our case back to the Labour Court one final time. If we are fobbed off again, we will have no choice but to examine a nuclear option, as our colleagues in Finland were forced to do when their government refused to deal with their legitimate claims. They resigned en masse. I have been attending AGMs around the country since the benchmarking report issued, and the anger out there is incredible. The Labour Court is last chance motel. We have nothing to lose now if that doesn't work. We have always done the right thing and protected patients during disputes, but the manner in which we were blackguarded by management last year when we did just that has now created a new environment. A stage has come when nurses will put themselves first for a change, and in any event we may as well, as I have said earlier, be hung for a sheep as a lamb. An interesting statistic to record for posterity. The barrister who chaired the benchmarking body, which recommended no increase for most nurses, himself earned a tidy sum of €2,000 a day, plus a reading-in fee of €35,000 for a cool overall €379,000. Nice work if you can get it. A Bachelor of Science degree, qualified nurse, would take over 10 years to earn that money, working full-time. In my letter to the Minister on the compensation scheme, I refer to the staffing crisis, which brings me to the funding of the HSE and the manner of the introduction of the embargo last September. This issue was the subject of a full Labour Court hearing, and I think it is appropriate to quote a passage from the court finding. The agreement does, however, require management to inform unions in advance of plans or proposals which have the potential to significantly affect their members in employment. It further requires that the unions be provided with an opportunity to put forward their views on what is proposed and have a real and constructive input into the decision-making process in the spirit of partnership which the agreement seeks to promote. The Court has no doubt that the initiatives giving rise to this dispute did have a significant effect on staff. It had the effect of reducing the number of staff available to provide a service to patients, and this in turn placed available staff under additional pressure. It also affected staff in that overtime and promotions were curtailed, and staff members who had a legitimate expectation of resuming work after a career break had the return to employment delayed. Accordingly, the Court has concluded that in this instance the HSE failed in its duty towards 216 to consult with the unions before proceeding to implement its breakdown initiative. This represents some indictment of Government, Department of Health and the HSE, but it does not matter. There is no penalty capable of being applied under the agreement either to the employers or Government. No threat to deduct 13.6% from their salary, as was threatened on our nurses. On the contrary, most of those on the management side who decided to ignore the provisions of towards 216 got an increase of between 10 and 16%. When the management side came to the Labour Court on the compensation scheme, they came with their hands hanging, didn't even bother to do a comprehensive submission in the expectation that the Labour Court would not rule in favour of nurses anyway. And even if the Court found in favour of nurses, it wouldn't matter either, because management government would just ignore it, which is what they have done in both cases.